So like I said, leadership is broken up into two primary parts. The first part of leadership, you have kind of like real life stuff that's important to know. Okay, resumes, cover letters, interviews, bullying, how to get along at work. Okay, you have that portion of leadership. That's mostly today's lecture this morning. You have the laws and ethics of nursing, so like your nurse practice acts and stuff like that. Okay, we're going to talk about that during the course of these four lectures. We're going to talk about how to do well on leadership content on boards. Half of your, well, not half, 23% of the NCLEX, and it goes up every year for some reason. Every time they redo the boards, every time they redo NCLEX in your test plan, leadership and management always increases in the amount that you'll see it on boards, okay? So part of what we're going to learn in leadership is how to answer prioritization, delegation, and management of care questions, okay? Because you will see them on boards. For example, pharmacology is about 12% of your boards. You might have one pharm question, okay? Prioritization, delegation, and management of care, which is what we're going to learn how to do in this section, is going to be 23% of your boards. So you're going to see, you know, potentially 15 of these questions as compared to, you know, a one pharm question. Okay, so it's super, super important that you learn it. And that's why we give you 4 lectures devoted to it. So study guide topics that we're going to cover in this lecture are highlighted for you. Okay, these are out of your leadership and vocational nursing book, Success in Practical and Vocational Nursing from Student to Leader. So they're not med-surg chapters. Okay, if you don't have the book, I have most of the relevant book pages built into my PowerPoint, because I've noticed that a lot of students don't have this book. Chapters 8, 9, and 17, if you do have the book, okay, is what we're working from, and these are what we're going to go over today. Everything highlighted here, okay. But we will cover all these topics throughout the course of the 4 lectures. Oh wait, you can't see my screen. Hold on, I apologize. It's early. Here we go. Yeah, sorry about that, Christy. I just realized it, but I appreciate you catching it for me. Here you go. Okay, so these topics that are highlighted now, you should be able to see it, are what we're going to talk about today. Okay, but we'll cover everything on the study guide during the course of the 4 lectures. So how the test is going to be, because I know that's what we all are super worried about, okay? How the test is going to be is one half of the test is going to be very simple, okay? It's not going to be board level questions, okay? It is going to be very level 1 definition type questions over what's on that study guide, okay? For example, definitions of negligence, definition of battery. I'm not going to try to trick you, okay? Just memorize this stuff on your study guide. You'll see there's like 27 points on your study guide, okay? So the first half of the test, the first 30 questions, are going to come from these 26 points on your study guide. Number 27 here, that's where the rest of the test is going to come from. Okay, so half of the test will be very easy definition style questions, you know it or you don't, from the study guide. 30 questions, okay? The other 30 are going to be prioritization, delegation, and management of care questions, okay? We are going to go over how to do those within the course of these lectures, okay? But if you want to practice in your portal, I have a resource for you. So if you go down to the leadership, I know there's a lot of stuff, mostly it's resume templates, so don't get too confused on it. But if you go down to your resources, I have a book here called Prioritization, Delegation, and Management Practice, okay? Now this is for RN, so delegation will be slightly different, and we'll go over the differences between RN and LP and delegation. Everything else in this book is very, very relevant. And so what it does is each chapter has, about 70, 80 practice questions. And at the end of the chapter, it gives these really good explanations and rationales as to why the answer is what it is. Okay. So if you want to start preparing for the leadership test, memorize these points on the study guide and start practicing in that book. If you did like 10 practice questions a day, that would be a reasonable amount in order to get prepared in time for the test. And please realize that you're probably going to get these questions wrong until the lecture on how to do them. okay? But I'm going to give you some methods. I've basically compiled every method that you can use. It's like a formula to answer these questions, okay? And I've compiled them all into a presentation, and we're gonna have that presentation. So you can start practicing. Just understand you may get them wrong until we have the lecture on it, and that's okay, because if you are practicing, the moment we have that lecture, everything's just going to click for you, and you're going to be like, oh, I did it, okay? And so I do encourage you to go ahead and start practicing. But if you want to do well on the leadership exam, this is how you do it, okay? You memorize the little 30 topics on the study guide that are fairly straightforward, fairly simple. And then once you've done that, you need to practice prioritization, delegation, management of care questions, because it's the biggest portion of your boards. And I'm very, I try to be very NCLEX focused, okay? So there are going to be some things that we talk about today that maybe aren't necessarily on your boards, like resumes and interviews, but they're going to be very valuable for you to know in life, okay? And so everything that we learn in this section is either very extremely valuable for real life or extremely valuable for NCLEX, okay, or both. So having said that, anybody have questions?
My study guide didn't open with the points highlighted, and so I wanted to know what points did you say did you have highlighted?
That's because I highlighted it just so, because we're going to talk about other points on this study guide in other lectures. So this is just for this lecture. So I'm not going to post a separate study guide for each lecture. Okay. So I just highlighted what we're going to cover today. And that's mostly so we can go through it as we go through lecture and make sure that we cover everything that I want to cover today. Okay. But it's right here. This video is being recorded. You can pause it. Okay. And I'll go through this study guide like I always do at the end of my lectures and make sure that we've covered everything. Okay. But yeah, it's not going to be highlighted on your portal because we're going to do other leadership lectures that are going to cover other things. And so I don't want to confuse the class. Okay. Because some people are going to watch these all four at the same time the day before the exam, right? Some people aren't going to attend. So, and that's fine, but I don't want people getting confused. Also, if you're attending today, you do not have to do the attendance assignment, okay? If you attend both lectures today. But if you only attend one or you have to leave or something comes up or whatever, that's fine. But by 11:55 tonight, you do need to do an attendance assignment. It's fairly short, okay? I believe my first one deals with nurse bullying. So let's go look at that. Okay. So the first attendance assignment is here. Oh, it's behavioral interviews. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to have you answer basically a behavioral interview question. Okay. And in just a few sentences, I think it's like 3 to 5 sentences. And you need to upload that today if you're not attending live. But you all, as of right now, don't need to worry about doing that. You're here. Okay. All right. Any other questions before we start about the test or any other concerns? I would say the last test, the last med-surg test you had was 3/4 board level material. It was a really hard test. This test is going to be half. Okay, so your prioritization, delegation, and management of care questions are going to be board level questions, NCLEX level questions, but the study guide questions are going to be considerably easier. So hopefully this test will be easier for you. Okay, so we're going to get started. This PowerPoint, it's weird, I have the wrong PowerPoint open. I think I closed the one I wanted. No, that's it. Okay. So, okay. We're going to start off talking about some basic stuff about leadership. So this is on page 238 of your book. But these are some core things that leaders, managers, supervisors, and you guys will be leaders, okay? I remember when I was a CNA, and I thought the LPN, now I never even met a nurse, okay, in a nursing home. I worked overnight as a CNA. And the LPN that I worked with was my leader, okay? She was the one who knew the most on the floor at any given time, okay, because I worked night shift. She was the supervisor. She was the leader. So you guys, it's very possible, especially if you take a job in like corrections or nursing homes, that you're going to be the leaders right out of school. You're going to be the person that people look up to. I really looked up to my first LPN. I still remember her very well. And I thought that she was so smart, and that and I really, really admired her. And so people are going to look to you as a leader, whether you want to be one or not, whether you're ready to be one or not. And so I'm going to teach you, you know, some important things to know in that respect. Okay. So you want to motivate your team. You want to communicate assertively, which we'll talk about. Problem solve effectively. You want to build a good team, and that's where nurse bullying comes in. Okay, and then we want to help manage stress effectively, because you're going to have stress in every work environment. It just depends on how well you deal with it and how well you encourage your team to deal with it as to whether or not you're going to be successful. All right, so management versus leadership. There's a difference, okay, in management versus leadership. So management is like you're taking care of payroll, okay? You're delegating out tasks, okay? That's a managerial role. A leader is somebody who inspires others to follow them, okay? Leadership is super, super important to me. One way that you guys can learn how to be good leaders and to get some really good examples of good leaders is to join your National Nurses Association. There is a National LPN Nurses Association. Nurses vote, guys. Whenever you join an organization that advocates for your profession, like the National Association of LPNs, your voice is going to become so much bigger, because it's going to be added into all the other voices in the country. And that's why we have nurse practitioners, okay? That laws nurse practitioners to provide diagnostic care, to provide prescription medication, okay? It's because nurses have a voice, and there was a need. And so nurses got together with the American Nurses Association, formed the American Association of Nurse Practitioners, and advocated to lawmakers. Every year at the Capitol in April, there's a Nurses Day at the Capitol. Thousands and thousands of nurses show up. It's a big deal. And you'll get to meet a lot of interesting people if you attend this, a lot of networking. The president of the American Nurses Association typically comes down and does a talk, and then we go to the Capitol here in Little Rock, and we talk to lawmakers about issues that are important to nurses. And so Ms. Duke Scott and I recently had a pretty tough conversation with at the last Nurses Day with Tom Cotton's field rep about patient staffing ratios. Okay, California has patient staffing ratios for nursing. So like an ICU nurse can only have 2 patients. And for example, or a med-surg nurse can only have 5, I think. When I started nursing at the hospital I started at, med-surg nurses were taking 9 patients in that hospital. Okay, unsafe, completely unsafe. And so part of being a good leader is advocating for your profession. Okay, but a leader is somebody who is going to inspire people to follow them. You're going to want to follow them because you respect them and you think that they have your best interests at heart. Okay, whereas a manager is just going to be somebody who tells you what to do, and you do it because it's your job. Okay. But leadership in nursing, it's very important to get involved in your professional organizations, because you can change the rules in your benefit when you all get together, because nurses have a big vote and a big voice whenever they get together. All right. So communication and management and leadership, the email, verbal, written, and a lot of your communication is going to be on your body language. So email communication, most of y'all are pretty good about that. But I do see occasionally things that are very unprofessional in your emails. And so I'm hoping to go over each of these points with you and help you be a little bit better on these: email, verbal, written, and body language communication. Feedback is important. So when you provide feedback to anybody about how they're doing, you want to start and end on a positive note. So a lot of you, whenever I provide maybe something that's negative, especially your grading or to you personally in clinical, I'll say something like, hey, you did everything that you were supposed to do today. This is the problem that I have, however. You know, you kind of rolled your eyes at Mr. So-and-so whenever they asked you to help them get a bedpan. But I really appreciate you doing it anyway, even though you didn't want to. I would just, prefer if you could try to keep your nonverbal body language on the inside. And then, so when you give feedback, you want to start with something positive that you're doing, that your nurse's aide is doing. Say, hey, I know you checked on that patient 3 times last hour because you're worried about their blood pressure, and I really appreciate that. And then go ahead and give your criticism if you have any, okay? And then go ahead and end with something positive as well. And so when you give feedback this way, this makes the person listening a lot more receptive, okay? If I just said, Jessica, you're an idiot, and you should have known that a blood pressure of 90/40, you should have known to alert me on that, you're an idiot, okay? If I say that, it's going to be a lot worse received than if I say, hey, Jessica, I know you have 30 patients today and you're really busy. And so I appreciate all the hard work you're doing. However, next time you have a patient whose blood pressure is 90/40, could you please let me know immediately? Because we definitely want to do something about that. But keep up the good work, and thank you. And so whenever you, whenever you provide feedback, make sure that you follow it up with something good that they're doing if it's criticism, okay? Also, when you provide feedback, you want to make sure to tell them good things too, okay? You don't only want to provide feedback when somebody's doing something negative. So a lot of you in your med-surg clinicals, if you had clinicals with me, I wrote out detailed little statements about your day so that you were good critical thinkers. And even if there was no criticism in there, I still gave you some positive feedback on things that I noticed, okay? So it's important that you do that, because that can get kind of lost in the stress of day-to-day life, okay? Kind of forget to do that sometimes. An organization's mission and values, okay? A mission is a statement that kind of gives a good overview of what the organization wants to accomplish. And then the values are going to be like specific characteristics and traits that this organization aims for. So Baptist Health has some, its mission is to provide excellent health care to Arkansas and the surrounding areas, okay? And then values are things like your honesty. Let's see. I can find them real quick. I should know them. I'm sure you guys have memorized them too. Okay. Stewardship is one. So honesty, respect, stewardship, performance, and quality or service. Okay. And so mission is we place emphasis on these values. The overall mission, of course, is to provide excellence in healthcare and lead the clinical experience in Arkansas. Okay, so a mission is an overview of what an organization wants to accomplish, and values are like a set of criteria that we aim to provide. Okay, let's see. And every organization will have these, and why it's important for you to know that every organization has these is because when you start writing your resumes and cover letters and you really want a job somewhere and it's a competitive job and it's going to be hard to get, when you work in that organization's mission and values into your paperwork, they'll notice that and they'll appreciate it. Okay. Motivating is an important technique that we're going to go over, and then conflict resolution, definitely important, especially when you're a leader, because you want to handle conflict very delicately. Okay. And we've got some leadership styles that are defined in your book that we're going to go over. All right, so management versus leadership. I kind of already talked about that. But management, for your official definition, the organization of all care required of patients in a healthcare setting for a specific period. That's the definition of management in nursing. Okay? The organization of care. Leadership is how a person empowers and develops a team to meet and exceed patient and institutional outcomes. So this is how inspiring you are and how willing people are to follow you, okay, for the overall goal of improving patient outcomes. We talked about email. Okay, so whenever you search for a job, communication is the most important skill in leadership. Please know that for your test. I'm going to ask you, what's the most important skill? It's going to be your communication. Whenever you're searching for a job, online open positions are the most efficient way. So I'm sure if I have any boomers in here, they're freaking out, or if you tell your parents about this or play this video for them, they will hate it. Because it used to be you would show up in person. And that was the best way to secure a job, was seeing your face and making that personal connection. Nowadays, it's all about online. Okay, you will not get a job if you go in, introduce yourself in person, hand them a resume, and don't fill out the application online. You will not get the job. Okay, so it's important that you realize that, and that's on your test. What's the best way to search for a job? The internet. Okay, online. Whenever you leave a job, it's professional to provide a resignation letter. It doesn't have to be long, and you don't have to say why. Okay. I'm resigning effective this date with a 2 weeks notice. Okay. If you don't do that, nursing is a small world, guys, and it'll come back to bite you. If you just don't show up for a job anymore, nursing is a very small world, especially here in Arkansas, and people are going to remember that kind of stuff. And it actually can come back to bite you at the state board level as well. So make sure that you give your 2 weeks notice. Is very important. Cover letters. So cover letters are a good way to introduce yourself. So you'll have the first paragraph of the cover letter should give a short, very brief overview of who you are and why you'd be good for the job. And then the second paragraph is how you relate to the organization's mission, vision, and values. Okay. And you can include a short 2-paragraph cover letter with your resume. Looks really good. If you go to your portal, we're going to talk about this more when I teach you how to do a resume, but if you will go to your portal, there are all kinds of resume templates for you, and each one includes the resume itself, as well as a cover letter that matches and a reference page. Okay, and so here's a 1-page resume that we have, and you can download this, you can use it, or you can get your own in Google, in Google or in Microsoft Word. But here's one of the resumes, okay, that you can download and use if you want to. I purchased them for you. They're very nice, and they tend to impress employers. I've had several students come back after they graduated and be like, Miss Linker, they loved my resume. They wanted to know where I got it. They thought it was very impressive. Okay. These polished resumes, they take a little bit more time to do, but they look nice and they will help you get the job. So if you can see, this reference page here matches this resume. Okay. And I know this is kind of a feminine theme. I guess, Noah, you're the only boy right now, but I do have more masculine here as well. And then you've got your cover letter. So your cover letter is also going to match the same template. And I think I've got 3 templates in here for you, and I have more as well if you guys want them. Okay. And what's great about these templates is it tells you everything that goes everywhere. This is not just, words in Spanish over here. This is actually telling you what goes in a cover letter right here. Okay. And so they're very, very helpful. Okay. And then after you've submitted your resume and cover letter online and you've filled out the online application, the next thing you'll do about a week later is email that hiring manager, because I know at big organizations like Baptist, sometimes human resources won't even send your resume over. They'll flag it for some random reason or your application and not send it at all. And so a really good way to kind of bypass that screening process that can sometimes be a little too specific is to send a thank you email to your hiring manager as a follow-up and be like, hey, I just wanted to let you know I filled out an application for this position. I'd really love to work with you, and I appreciate you reviewing my information. And when I send a thank you or follow-up, I will always include my resume in that as well, just in case HR did not forward it over to the hiring manager. And then body language, super, super important. So one of the students yesterday in clinical got to sit in with the hiring manager, and she got to sit in on an interview for the unit. Okay, so that's one of the things I want you guys to learn in leadership. And one thing that she noted to me was that the applicant had really good body language, and both the interviewer and the interviewee seemed to vibe really well. And she thought that was a very important part of the interview. Okay, and it is. So, are you fidgeting constantly? Because that's a no. Don't do that. Okay. Are you looking away frequently? Because that's a no. You don't want to do that. Are your arms crossed in front of your chest? Okay, that's closed off body language. You want nice open body language. Okay. Oftentimes, if you mirror the person's body language that you're interviewing with, that will help you. So whatever they're doing, you kind of do that as well. And then make sure your facial expressions match what you're saying. Make sure that you you have a passion for what you're speaking about, so that it doesn't come off as unsure or you don't know what you're talking about. Okay? So body language is very important. Tone of voice is very important. Eye contact. Um, now that we're in the times of COVID, if you guys go and you do interviews in person, probably most of them will be on Google Meet. So you're going to lose some of this nonverbal communication. But, excuse me, if they are in person, make sure to, I wouldn't offer a handshake at this time, but, you can maybe offer the elbow thing or whatever you're comfortable with. Or just mention, I would shake your hand, but I want to be as safe as possible. And just so that you know that that's a professional step that you do when you meet someone, you're just not going to do it at this time because of the times we're in. Okay. So you have verbal, nonverbal, written, and telephone communication methods. This is in your book. So for those of you that don't have the book, this is one of those PowerPoint slides I told you about that I would provide for you. Okay. And so verbal, make sure you're polite. Make sure your tone is controlled. You never want to get loud or aggressive with anyone. Okay. Please note that you are a role model. So I personally, because like I say, we're in my personal life, but when I deal with you all, I try to keep that at a minimum because it's not professional. Gossip and rumors and bullying, we're going to talk about later. Use I statements. So this is a really important technique, especially when you're in a conflict with somebody. And this is anybody, leadership, at work, at home, whatever. Use I messages. So I feel uncomfortable when you speak about me that way. I saw that you tied the patient's wrist to the side rail. This could cause injury. So you're not putting blame on a person when you criticize them using an I statement. So you're not saying you tied that patient's wrist wrong, you need to undo that. You're saying, I noticed that this patient's wrist is tied on here wrong. Could you fix that? So I statements are very good at not placing judgment or blame, and they're very non-confrontational, so they can be really useful that way. Okay. Rather than you need to do this, you did this wrong. Okay. When you do an I statement, it makes people less defensive and they'll be more apt to listen to you. Whereas when you say you did that wrong, they're going to shut down and get defensive immediately. Okay. When you're talking with your supervisor, try to bring up good things that are going on, just like when you provide feedback to like a unlicensed assistant personnel or a CNA, how you would say something good, then your criticism, and then something good again. Same thing when you're talking to your supervisor. If you have a criticism or a problem you're addressing, say, first of all, I really like the way that you do this. Here's my issue. And then follow it up with, but I also like when you do this. Okay. And so that will really help you with your verbal communication. Nonverbal. Body language needs to be open, smiling, engaged, polite. Okay. You need to walk with a purpose, especially in nursing. If you're walking around with your head down and your feet shuffling and you're walking 10 steps in 10 minutes, that's going to be very obvious to anybody working with you that you're not interested in what you're doing. Okay. That's an important part of nonverbal body language in nursing. Written communication. So when you communicate written with your staff, make sure to understand that they're not at your level. Okay. Make sure to understand that they may be unlicensed, untrained, never been to college, never been to school. Make sure you communicate with them at their level. If you have something, like for example, my email about not communicating after office hours, I wrote that email at 10:30 last night when I got a text from one of you. And I was irritated about it because it's been happening over and over and over for the past couple of weeks, like every night. And so what I did was I saved that email in my drafts and I did not send it. Okay. And I thought, I'm going to go back and look at this in the morning. Okay. And make sure that this is what I want to say so that I'm not coming off as rude or hateful or something like that. Okay. And that's what I did. And I changed it a little bit this morning. And so it's important when you do written communication, don't do anything when you're emotional. Sleep on it. Okay. Let's see. And then Written communication is very helpful if it's organized, especially for your night shift staff. Make sure that they can find the written communication easily, make sure it's labeled. And then telephone, you've already been kind of learning the SBAR technique, right? But when you talk to somebody on the telephone about a patient, you definitely need to use your SBAR. Use the name of the person, identify who you are. And that's how you start with your SBAR, right? You say, hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm with so-and-so nursing home. I'm calling you about patient so-and-so. Okay. Let's see. I think there are some people who need to get into maybe. Yeah. All right. When you write an email, okay, this is from your book. It's email etiquette. Okay. So make sure your subject line is specific. Okay. State your request within the first 3 lines of an email. So when you email somebody and you want them to do something for you or you need their help, introduce yourself briefly and then get to the chase of it, because whoever's reading this email probably has thousands of emails to get through and they need to know really quickly what you need. Okay. State your request within the first 3 lines. So when you email somebody, you need to say, hi, this is Amaria. I'm from the LPN program at BHCLR. You guys don't have to do that because I know your email addresses and stuff. But if you're at a job, okay, and then I'm having problems with XYZ, then you need to ask for help with XYZ or what you want them to do. It's always helpful if you give a deadline in the email, because then that gives them, that starts thinking in their head, okay, I have so much time to handle this problem. Whereas if you don't give a deadline, you may not get a response back. Okay, especially like if you're having trouble communicating with people now in the program or in your job, you know, if you follow these rules, you're going to get a lot quicker responses, a lot more efficient responses. Okay? So state the context in the ask early in the message. Make sure you include a deadline if you can. And then format it in a way that is easy to read. So what we mean by that is a lot of people are reading their emails on their cell phones nowadays. And I'm really bad about this personally. I'm sure you guys have noticed. But if you're going to send an email, don't make it paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs long. Or if it has to be that long, then you need to separate it and break it up. Because realize that these people are reading this on their phone. Okay? Most people don't get to email first on their computer nowadays. And so make your message viewer friendly that way by breaking it up. Okay? Use your tools like bold and italics to highlight things that are important. Okay? But this is the email etiquette from your book. This one right here with the punctuation, your class is really bad at that. Especially, and texting goes the same way, okay? Use the same email etiquette for texting. Identify who you are, identify what you need, do it as short and succinct as possible, and then include a deadline if appropriate. And please don't use like excessive punctuation or caps locks, because when you read a text or an email with 15 punctuation marks and all capital letters like you're Donald Trump, it's aggressive, okay? And the person reading it is going to take it as aggressive, okay? And it's not going to be a very productive conversation. So please be careful with that. I would never use all caps or exclamation points, okay? Never. And I have a few of you that do that to me. So I'm teaching you now, it's not professional. Try not to do that to your teachers, your bosses, even people you're communicating with, especially underneath you. You will never get a text from me that's in all caps with exclamation points because it's rude, okay? Or if you do, it's something very, very serious. All right, resumes and interviews. So we're talking about resumes first. You have an assignment. Actually, let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 10 a.m. and then we'll start the lecture on resumes and interviews, and I'm going to teach you how to do your resume. Anybody have questions?
Ms. Linker,
Yes.
do we have this PowerPoint?
Yes, it's in your portal.
Oh, okay. I hadn't looked for it.
Is that better on the volume, Amaria? I turned it up a little bit. Yeah, your study guide won't have points highlighted, Jamiria. These are just ones I made for me for this particular lecture, okay? So far, we've gone over positive and negative feedbacks and the techniques. Um, we're about to do the process of the job application, resumes, and interviews. What's the best way to search for a job online? Which should be the focus of the cover letter B. How you relate to that organization's mission, vision, and values. But yeah, I'm going to give everybody like a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 10. I'll cover the rest of this that I've gone over so far, and then we'll start resumes and cover and interviews real quick. I'll teach you how to do your resume. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Is the volume any better, Amaria? Is anyone else having volume problems? Y'all don't let this get to recording and then me find out it's trash. Okay, good, thanks. Okay. So I can present my screen again. Okay. So topics on the study guide that we have already covered. Let's go over that really quick. Okay. Positive and negative feedback. Make sure you give positive feedback. Make sure you make time for that. Negative feedback, make sure you give it in a manner that uses an I statement. Make sure you give it with positive feedback. Okay, and make sure you acknowledge the good things that whoever you're criticizing is doing. Make sure you're very specific. Okay, documenting and communicating objectively. So this will be a big part of your professionalism. We'll continue to talk about this later, but it's best to only put facts and not put how you feel when you're documenting and communicating. Okay. You know, patient stated, quote, "I'm going to kill you and your whole family," unquote, provided Ativan, PRN. Okay. That's objective. Subjective would be like, "I hate this patient. They're the worst patient in the world and they're horrible." Okay. Don't document that stuff. Don't communicate that stuff in writing. Okay. Subjective is how you feel. Objective is the data that's going on. Okay. We'll talk about assertive communication in just a little bit. We haven't talked about that yet. We're about to talk about illegal versus legal interview questions. We haven't talked about the communication styles yet or the leadership styles. We haven't talked about the problem-solving process yet. We're about to. We did talk about the difference of leadership and management. Okay, so management is organization of care. Okay, whereas leadership is empowering others to follow your example. We talked about a mission statement. Okay. So, for example, leadership is the manner in which a leader gets along with coworkers with the objective of meeting the goals of the facility. Management is organizing all the tasks required for clients for a specific setting for a specific period. That will be on your test word for word. Okay, the definitions of management and leadership. Also, we're going to talk about communication styles here in a little bit. Those are all leadership communication styles, not necessarily management. That's not important to delineate on your test. I'm just letting you know. Okay. And if you're communicating with somebody who's very subjectively communicating, like a resident says, "Well, this LPN's just terrible." Okay. You would want to ask something like, "Why?" Okay. Can you give me a specific example? Because that will give you something objective to communicate and document. Okay. Let's see. You want to provide feedback. When you provide feedback, make sure you provide it as close to the occurrence as possible. So you don't want to provide feedback on something somebody did 3 weeks ago. Okay. If you notice that an LPN did not, or a CNA did not turn a patient, make sure as soon as you notice that you address it. Okay. In the conversation by praising the individual and things they've done right, and offer suggestions on how to fix the behavior. Okay. When you're doing feedback for your test. You need to chart objectively and accurately. We talked about the most important key to successful leadership is good communication. Okay? That's why I try to be very good communicators with you guys. I think it's important. Let's see. I will have a select all that apply question on things that are illegal to ask during an interview. We're about to go over those. I have a chart for you. Resume covers letters, like I said, need to be specific to the organization you're applying to. So you need to take their mission, vision, and values into account. Okay. When resigning from a job, please don't include anything negative in your resignation letter. It's not professional, even though it may be true. You may feel that way. Okay. Okay, that's all I want to talk about in a second. Okay. So let's switch over to resumes. Okay. So, can everyone see my screen okay? The resume for this assignment for this class, it is a 10-point grade. It's going to cushion your grade a little bit. So if you're not doing as well in med-surg, I think it's very important that you take this assignment seriously. You can turn it in to the portal up until the 16th. And if you turn it in on or before the 16th, it's not due till the 21st. But if you turn your resume and references in on or before the 16th, I will grade it, send it back to you, and let you revise it. So make sure you get the maximum points and that you have a really nice polished resume. Okay. And we're going to go over some common mistakes and tips that are helpful. All right. So the resume is the first impression about you that they're going to get. Some components a resume should always include: your name, phone number, email address, and mailing address. Those are not optional. You must have all four of those. Okay. Name, email address, physical address or mailing address, and then your phone number. Also, your email. Please don't make it like bigbooty69@gmail.com. Okay, please don't. It needs to be something professional. So if you don't have a professional email, use your school one. If you don't want to use your school one and you don't have a professional email, make one. It takes like 2 minutes in Gmail to make an email. Okay, so make sure it looks professional. Don't put anything silly on there. Okay, it's going to hurt you in getting a job, and I'm not going to give you a degree. All right. So we're going to start on this column right here, the education section of your resume. A lot of students put many different things here. A lot of you put associate's degrees. This is a diploma program. Now, you may have an associate's degree from Pulaski Tech, and that's fine if you do. But this program needs to be listed separately. It's a diploma. So if on these resume templates, they have what you should put. So your degree is diploma in licensed practical nursing. Okay, and that's also your major. You look down here at the example. The school is Baptist Health College, Little Rock. Not Baptist Health College School, not College of Nursing Baptist Health, no other variation of that. No dashes, okay, not Baptist Health College of Little Rock. It's very important that you get your school right. What if the person interviewing you also went to the school and they know that you had it wrong? So please, it has to be correct. Baptist Health College, Little Rock. Exactly like I have it here, okay? And then if you want to, you can put the school underneath it. You don't have to. So which part of the Baptist Health College Little Rock is the School of Practical Nursing? This is optional. And then the date is not optional. It does need to be accurate dates, okay? And when you do your education, say you have several degrees, you want to start from the most recent down, okay? So your LPN diploma from BHCLR will be the top education, okay? Then you'll go down. So say if you got an associate's degree in general studies from Pulaski Tech, that would be your next one, okay? So it'll be associates in general studies, Pulaski Technical College, and then the year, okay? And keep going down from there. You don't have to put your high school, you can. And you can also play with this template too, okay? So say you don't have very many licenses and certifications, or say you don't have any. I know you guys all have basic life support, but say you don't have very many of those, you can play with this template and make this section bigger or smaller. Okay. You can also move these up if you like to make more room for your education. So don't be afraid to play with this. Okay. So that's for education. Make sure the name of the school is correct. UAMS, University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. Not medical science, medical sciences. Okay. It'll take you 2 seconds to Google the name of your school if you're not sure, and it will really make a difference, because if somebody looking at your resume went to that school and they know you've put it wrong on your resume, it will be a red flag. Okay. All right. So licenses and certifications. This is going to be an important part for you to all have in your resume. If you have a resume from Google Docs, or you can actually go into Word and you can type in resume. Okay. And it will bring up a template for you. You go to New to blank document, let's see, and then search for online templates right here. Okay. And you type in resume, and you'll get 100 resumes that come up that look fine. You can do any of these. You don't have to do my templates. My templates are more like nursing specific, but you don't have to do them. You can do any of these. However, when you do any of these templates that you like, please make sure that you have a section for licenses and certifications, because as you grow in your career, and even now, you're going to have a lot of these. Okay. I have a lot of them. And as you continue on in nursing, you'll amass these. You'll have a lot. Right now, I know you have your BLS, right? So if I was putting my BLS on here as an example, I would say BLS. Okay. Then who gave you certification? Okay. So American Heart Association. Okay. And then you just put, now for your license number, for your LPN, right now you will just leave that blank. Okay. And you don't need a license number for your BLS. And then for certifications, I would say when they expire. Okay. So say your BLS expires, March of 2021. That's what I would put here. Okay. All right. Now for your LPN, and also you want to put the most recent first. So the most recent certifications that you have. So actually above the BLS certification is going to be your LPN. Okay. And your LPN is going to be given to you by the Arkansas State Board of Nursing. Okay. I do want you to go ahead and put it on your resume, even though you are not licensed yet. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to have options for your license number. Okay. And then just leave it blank. And then I want you to put pending, whatever month you plan to test. Okay. So pending January 2021. Okay. And then when you go in and you're ready to start applying for jobs and you've already taken your boards or whatever, you can just erase that pending. Okay. So the certifications most recent to oldest. Okay. So like my BLS is my last certification on my resume because I got that one first. Okay. Whereas my most recent certification is my ECMO because I got that one most recently. Okay. And so also if you have anything extra like your CCRN will go here, your BLS, your ACLS, your PALS, your LPN license, your RN license, anything like that will go into this section. Okay. All right. Any questions on education and license and certifications? Like I said, if you want to do a resume from like Google or whatever, that's totally fine, but you need to have a license and certification section. I will count you off if you don't. So profile. You can have this or you can not. It's really optional. But it makes your resume look really nice and it gives your employer an idea of what you're all about and what you're looking for without you having to write a cover letter. It's basically a very short version of a cover letter that doesn't relate to the organization. It's just about you. Okay? So this will be, this needs to have proper grammar. Okay? Please. So I would say my name is Brandy Linker. I have been in nursing for the last 16 years. I'm seeking employment as a licensed practical nurse, having just graduated from the BHCLR nursing LPN program. And And then maybe some career goals. So like in this profile of my resume, I put my 5-year goals. I said within the next 5 years, I'm hoping to become certified in medical Spanish interpretation and to obtain my doctor of nursing practice. Okay. So you might want to put some career goals in here, but 2 sentences, maybe 3 at most. Who you are, why you want this job, and maybe your career goals, or how this job will help you reach your career goals. Okay. Work experience. So if you have a ton of like past work experiences and stuff, don't put all that on here, guys. If you worked at Dollar General for 3 months when you were 17, I don't want you to put that on your resume. Okay. This needs to be things that are relevant to customer service, things that are relevant to healthcare. Okay. If you don't have any of that, you can put your most recent jobs. You need to put anything that can be relevant to your work as an LPN. So I think like being a waitress can be very relevant if you don't have anything else. But I would say your primary medical jobs need to come first. And then you also do them by date. So it'll be most recent. Again, like everything else on the resume, everything is current to least recent. Okay, that's how you organize it. So work experience, if you were a PCT, you would put patient care tech. Please don't use abbreviations on your resume. You cannot, other than LPN, that's fine. People in nursing are going to know what that is. But like whenever you talk about your past jobs, maybe somebody has never worked at Baptist and they don't know what a PCT is, because at UAMS they call them MAs. Okay, so make sure you write it out. Don't put PCT, put patient care technician. Okay. Then work the company. So this would be Baptist Health, Little Rock. And then the dates that you work there. And then in this section, you can just erase this if you want. But if you want to give your employer idea of what you do, I suggest you use this. Be like, Baptist Health is one of the biggest healthcare providers in the state. In this role, and then you'll bullet point what your job duties were. Okay. These don't have to be long or involved. This is a lot of words. You can just put things like assistance with ADLs. Okay. Now, anybody in healthcare is going to know what an ADL is. That's an okay abbreviation. It's just organization-specific abbreviations like PCT are not appropriate. But things like this. These are just could be a few bullet points of the main job duties that you had. Okay, and things that will translate well to your new job. You want to pick things that will work well with also being an LPN. So if I had waitressing on here, which I was a waitress for a long time, I would put on here customer service. Okay, something like that. I have 1-page resumes and 2-page resumes in your book or in your portal. So if you have more licenses, certifications, more education, more work experience, and you just really need a second page, there are 2-page resumes of all of these versions for you. So you can pick a 2-page if you have a lot of work experience, okay? Like I said, not every job that you've had needs to be on here. These are going to need to be jobs that are recent and relevant to your work as an LPN. Okay? Any questions about the resume so far? All right. So the second part of your resume assignment, you need to upload a reference page with at least 3 references. Okay. You can use me as one if you want to. Okay. There it is. Okay. So again, this needs to match everything on your front page. And then if you're going to use me, I'll do an example. You need at least 3. Okay. So that's my name, Brandy Linker. My company is Baptist Health College, Little Rock. I'm faculty. Please do it this way. Don't do it any other way. Okay. Phone number. Okay. And then my email. This is all you need. Okay. Another thing about your references, they do not need to be family or friends. They need to be professional references. So I want you to put people who have been your teachers, people who you have at least worked with, but it's best to have like a supervisor or manager that you worked under, okay? People in slight positions of authority over you who are familiar with your work ethic, or even at the same lateral position as you who are familiar with your work ethic, are good people to put. Especially these companies that they say here, reference company, they need to match things on your resume, either your education or your work experience. Okay. You need to pick people who are relevant and professional. You cannot put your mom or your best friend. You cannot put each other. Okay. People that you've worked with or are currently working with. And then whenever you do put a reference down, make sure that you ask that person if it's okay. Because they may not answer the call, may not realize you're calling. You want to make sure that if these employers do check your references, that they will get in contact with you. And I'll tell you nowadays, guys, honestly, a lot of employers don't check references. And that's because they can get into some sticky legal situations if they ask too many questions. Really, the only thing legally they're allowed to ask your references is, did you work there? How long did you work there? And anything else that reference wants to provide is up to them. But it's kind of a sticky situation with them asking a bunch of questions about you. So a lot of people honestly don't even check anymore. Okay. All right. Interview questions that are illegal. Okay. Well, let's finish up resumes. Anybody have questions about resumes first before we go into interviews? Nobody has resume questions? Y'all know this will be an assignment you'll have to do, right? Text me at midnight if not needs to. Can everybody hear me okay still? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. You're in the chat. Okay, gotcha. All right. So now we're going to move on to interviews. Anybody nervous about interviews? Okay. I actually have some former students that are going to come interview you guys next week if you participate in the group with me. I'm going to break you off into one-on-one groups, okay, for 15 minutes, and I'm going to have them interview you, and then I'm going to have them tell me if they would give you the job. So if you want the practice, you don't have to do that, okay? Just if you want it. Let's see. Make sure there's nothing else on the test I want to talk about with resumes. No, I think that's it. Okay. So interview questions. So when you go in for an interview, first of all, you guys are at a little bit of a disadvantage because you're new. Okay. So one interview question that's pretty common and that I am going to have on your test that employers will ask are, what are the areas you need to work on, or what areas are you weak in? Okay. Every single one of your answers should be experience related because you don't have experience as an LPN. I don't care if you've got 20 years as a CNA, it's different. Okay. So anytime an employer asks you, what are some areas you need to work on? What are some areas you're concerned about in your history, things like that? Any problems they're looking for? Don't say I have a bad attitude, okay? Please don't say that, even if you do. What you need to say is, I lack experience, but I'm very willing to learn, and I'm a quick learner, okay? And so that's going to be y'all's go-to answer for what do you need to improve upon, because you're new, okay? There are certain questions that an interviewer is not allowed to ask you. So when you go into an interview, first of all, be on time. Super important to be on time. If you're doing an interview online, make sure you have a good connection and it's a quiet environment, which a lot of your interviews may be online because of this pandemic. So make sure, when I say on time, you really need to be 15 minutes early to an interview, okay? When the interviewer walks into the room, you stand, okay? It's polite to stand and shake their hand if we're not in a pandemic. If we are, just say, I would shake your hand, but considering the state of our health right now, I may not want to do that. And then you'll follow them to wherever you're being interviewed at. And there are some questions that they're going to ask you. There are some questions they are not allowed to ask you. Okay. So they cannot ask your age. It's illegal. Okay. They can't ask when you graduated high school because that will tell them your age. Okay. The only thing they can ask is if you're over 18. They can't ask you, are you a citizen? They can't ask you where you're from or where your parents were born. They can't ask you what your native language is. Okay. Those can all be seen as not so much racist, but you don't want to exclude anybody for a job based on where they're from or how they sound. Okay. But you can ask, are you authorized to work in the U.S.? You cannot ask what race or color they are. Okay. Do not put that on your resume. There are resumes that exist out there with pictures. I would not put one. Okay. Just in case. You can't ask any questions about that. Religion, you cannot ask what religion they are. Okay. You can say, at Baptist Health, we value Baptist Christian values, but you can't say, do you also value Baptist Christian values? You can't do that. Okay. It's not appropriate. Marital or family status. You can't ask if they're married. You can't ask who they live with. You can't ask if they're gay, straight, lesbian. You can't ask if they plan to have a family. That's a big one, right? Because women can be discriminated against when they're pregnant or planning to become pregnant. Okay. Can't ask about childcare. You can't ask how tall or how much they weigh. How tall they are or how much they weigh. You can't ask about disabilities. Now, a lot of applications will have a disability section where you could voluntarily provide disabilities if you have them, and or a lot of applications will say, hey, these are the physical job requirements. Can you meet these? Okay, but you can't directly ask if they have a disability. Arrest record, you cannot ask about that. Okay. They may do a background check. Okay, so they can ask if you've been convicted of a felony, but they can't ask, like, have you been arrested? What for? Have you been detained? None of that. Military, they can't ask about being honorably or dishonorably discharged. They can ask what branch, what type of training, but they can't ask about your behavior issues in the military. So if people do ask you these questions, here's how you deal with it. Okay. If somebody says, how old are you? Are you asking how many years of experience that I have? Okay. Do you plan to have children? I'm focused on my career and you can be sure of my commitment to this job. Okay. How's your health? I'm fully able to perform all the job functions listed on the job resume or on the job duties. What's your religion? My religious practices have no impact on my job. Or how do you feel about working for a woman? I've always successfully worked as part of a diverse team. Okay. So those questions, people should not be asking you those questions. But if they do, these are some polite ways to respond. Okay. All right. So behavioral interviews. There's something called the STAR method. So first of all, does anybody know what a behavioral interview is? A behavioral interview question. All right, this is where your attendance assignments comes in. What are y'all talking about in the chat over here? PowerPoint?
Yeah, she wanted to know if the legal and illegal questions were on the PowerPoint. Or
If what
they were-
questions? If the test questions are on the PowerPoint?
No, the slide that you just went over about the questions they can and cannot answer. And I was telling her that slide in that PowerPoint.
Okay, perfect. If you downloaded the PowerPoint yesterday, you may not have the slide. It's new. Sorry, but it's there now. So if you go re-download it, it'll be there for you, okay? I had an old chart and I didn't like it, so I got a pretty one. Y'all know I'm very visual. Okay. Thank you, Jamiri. Appreciate that. Okay, so behavioral interviews, when you go in for an interview, the most terrifying thing is when they ask you a question and it stumps you, okay? And so a behavioral interview is one a lot of big corporations use. I know St. Vincent's uses it. A lot of managers will use these. And they are they're kind of tricky because they're trying to discern how you would react in certain situations, and they can stump you if you're not prepared for them. Okay, so a behavioral interview question would be like, tell me about a time you faced a challenge in your last job and how you handled it. Okay, now you may not have a great answer for that right off the bat. You have to think about it, right? It's kind of a hard question to answer, especially on the spot. And so what you do, just like for any test that you have, when you have an interview and for a job you really want, you study, okay? And part of the way that you can study for an interview is to look at the mission, vision, and values of an organization, their philosophy, their mission, okay? But you can also practice or write out some answers to behavioral interview questions, okay? I highly suggest you do this if there's a job that you really want or a grad school that you really want to get into. Say you want to go to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine for your RN or your BSN or whatever. Really, really think about writing out some answers to these type of questions because they can stump you, okay? And so there's a method to answering these questions. So say they give you one that you didn't think of or that does stump you. If you can remember STAR, you can get through it, okay? So the STAR technique, S stands for situation, T stands for task, so situation or task. You're going to describe the situation that you were in or the task that you needed to accomplish, be specific and provide details. Paint a vivid picture for your interviewer to create a clear understanding, but you want to do this in like about 3 to 4 sentences, very short. And keep all these behavioral interview answers very short. So situation or task is S and T. A is action. So describe the situation. I had a student who failed their first 2 pharmacology exams. They were very despondent. They didn't know what to do, and they were very upset. And they came to me for help. That's the situation. Action. What did you do? I provided them with a study plan as well as templates and taught them how to organize their calendar. Okay. So use I statements. What did you do to fix the problem? Result. The student was able to bring up her grades and pass the course. Okay. Focus on positive outcomes. So you never want to end a behavioral interview question or any question in an interview with a negative thing. So if my student had not improved her grade and failed the course, I would say something like, while the student wasn't able to improve her grade at this point, she went ahead and dropped the program, and she has plans to attend next semester, and I'm helping her prepare for that now. So even though that's a negative outcome, really, we kind of framed it in a positive light. You guys see what I'm saying? Because we're going to help that student move forward, okay? And so any feedback you got or anything you learned from the situation is good as well. Quantify your results if possible. So in your result, what that means is put a number on it, okay? So 48 out of my 58 students passed this course, okay? That's a number I can put, okay? On the last exam, it was the most difficult exam they've ever had, and yet 52 out of 58 students passed after score adjustment with a grade of 77 or better, okay? That's a number. I'm quantifying results, okay? And NCLEX pass rate, that's a quantifiable result, okay? So maybe for you, maybe you're telling a story about having to call out sick. Your quantifiable results may be that job was based on a point system, and I only ever accrued 0.5 points my entire time there, okay? So some kind of number to help support your story. So that's the STAR method. If you are not attending live today, what you get to do, is write 3 to 5 sentences. I want you to answer one of these behavioral interview questions, okay? Doesn't matter which one, pick one. And if you're wanting to prepare for an interview or you're super psyched about a job right now and you're really wanting to get that job, I would prepare answers that follow this STAR method, okay? The situation, task, action, result method for these questions, because these questions can be translated. These are the most common behavioral interview questions, and they can be really easily translated to other behavioral interview questions that are very similar, okay? And so this is what I would focus. I would write out answers to these that are maybe at most total 6 sentences long, okay? 3 to 5 sentences on each question. And that gives you a really good prep for your interview, and you'll be able to answer anything that they ask right away. And then the answer to what is your greatest weakness is going to be experience for you guys. Okay. But like I said, anything you say that's negative, follow it up with a positive. So while I do lack experience, I have a good learning attitude, and I'm ready to learn what I need to learn to help your patients or whatever. Okay. Also, tips for a behavior-based interview: what skills are required? Know what skills are required, and let the interviewer know how you're prepared for those, or put it in your resume. Identify examples from your experience where you demonstrated these skills. Develop and rehearse brief stories using the STAR formula. That's very important. Okay. Use numbers to quantify your results. Identify 3 to 5 top selling points that you have that they may want to hire you for. Maybe it's your customer service. Maybe it's your critical thinking. Maybe it's, your hands-on skills, whatever it is. And then any examples that you can provide in addition to your work experience: internships, class projects, volunteer work. When I was early starting my career and I wanted to get jobs, I put things like I was president of the Student Nurse Association of my bachelor's class, stuff like that, life experiences. Okay. These are some helpful tips on effective written communication. They're not necessarily going to be on your test, but if you want to review them before you start writing, emails that are important to you, resumes, things like that, this could be very helpful for you. And I will link it into your portal. Or I think it's already linked into your portal within the attendance assignment, but I'll put it in there. All right, any questions on interviews? Resumes? No? Everybody feel pretty cool with that? Okay. All right. These are tricks of written communication. You can read these on your own. I don't want to read it all to you. But whenever you're messaging your teacher, emailing your boss, somebody you want to potentially work with, it's very important to respond to emails promptly, proofread your email. Okay. Don't use excessive caps or punctuation marks to convey emotion. Okay. Read through the email completely before responding or forwarding. And then direct your message properly, who it needs to go to. Make sure you don't message the entire class if you're only meaning to message one person, especially that can violate HIPAA, right? Also, you need to know, studies show that people are much braver when communicating from behind a screen, and that the lack of nonverbal cues often makes email sound more aggressive than intended, okay? So you're gonna say things in email, and I've had several of you do this. You've said things in email to me that you would never say in person, okay? Hateful things, things that you're mad about, okay? And that's fine, but make sure if you're emailing something to somebody who's a professional colleague of yours, that you don't ever email something that you wouldn't say in person. And then make sure that your tone is friendly, okay? Like I always, if you guys look at my emails, I always in the email with thanks, because you guys can't tell how I'm feeling when I send you an email, okay? And so since you can't get those nonverbal cues that I'm not mad at you, I try to put things in there that are polite, like please and thank you, because I want you to know that I'm not upset with you. This is just what we need to do, okay? So make sure that you put those cues into your email, because they're not there since you don't have any nonverbal communication going on. Okay. All right, these are from chapter 8. They're ways to show somebody that you're listening. So these are very useful to use in an interview as well, okay? So when you restate what the patient said, when you clarify what they said, ask questions about it. And I have examples here for each of these. When you reflect on what they said, basically summarize what they said. When you paraphrase, another way of summarizing on what they said. Reflecting is more like an overall summary, whereas paraphrasing is that specific phrase. Minimal encouraging, okay, yes, things like that. Remaining silent can be a great way to just listen sometimes and just not say anything. Summarizing, and then validating, okay? So making sure what they said is what you heard, okay? There are blocks to communication. These are big on NCLEX, guys. Any NCLEX question that has a block to communication, do not pick that answer. Never. Eliminate that answer right away, okay? Everything will be okay. Let's get to the bottom of this once and for all. You could be having heart surgery. Just think you could be having heart surgery. This is just wart removal. You're going to be fine. Everyone feels this way. I have several other patients who are sick tonight. What do you do? Okay. These are not good communications tactics, and they are the wrong answer every time I'm doing this. Okay. All right. Conflict. So, there's not a lot I really want you to know about the book stuff on conflict. I'm going to teach you a little bit about bullying and how to handle interpersonal conflict. This is just what your book tells you. You're welcome to read through it if you want to, but I'm not going to waste your time reading it. Finding common ground, I would say, is one great way to solve conflicts, okay? And using those I statements, that's a very useful technique as well. You don't want to assume anything, okay? So clarify before you make assumptions and get upset, okay? And then often, if you're in a conflict with someone and you guys come to a true compromise is only when both sides feel like they lose, okay? So just understand that you may not be happy completely with the outcome. If you're having a conflict with someone, you have to compromise, okay? These are steps to problem solving. They're available in your textbook, and I've linked them here in case you don't have the textbook, okay? But these are basically steps when you have a problem with someone, okay? So get your data, write objectively what's going on, set a goal. So I want to pass this class or whatever, okay? Choose interventions that will help you get to that goal, okay? And then evaluate and reevaluate your plan as you go through it. Especially when you're having a conflict with somebody that you're leading, okay? Or that you're in charge of, like a unlicensed assistant personnel or CNA. Make sure if you are having conflict with them, say they're not showing up to work on time. You need to be collecting data on what days they're there on time and what days they're not, so that you can have evidence to support your concerns, okay, when you address it with them. All right. SBAR. I know you guys talked about this a little. I emailed you a really, really good video that I like for SBAR. So please go back and watch that if you have not. But if you've already done your ATI videos, I bet you have watched it because it's a really good video. Okay. But this is basically the components of an SBAR. They're in chapter 8. They're also, yeah, I'll try to send you guys out pictures for this too. I thought maybe I had them in there, but I don't. So situation, who you are, your unit, your patient's name and room number and what the problem is, and how severe it is. Your background, so how they came to be in your care. Okay. Their admission date if they're in the hospital. Any recent changes that are going on with them. Allergies, okay. Code status, anything relevant. Assessment is going to be by body system usually, okay. So assessment is by, usually I start out with IV site, vital signs, and then go by body system, okay. And you may want to start with the most pressing problems, anything that's life-threatening. And then recommendation is what you need whoever you're talking to do. So when you do these ATI assignments, you need to pretend like you're turning it into the next nurse who will care for this patient. So you're giving a report to the next nurse, okay? A lot of the times in SBAR, you'll be calling a doctor. So what do you need that doctor to do? Hey, doc, I really need you to give me some hydralazine for this high blood pressure or whatever, okay? So recommendation, what do you need them to do? This is more in-depth provision of all the things that are located or that should be included in SBAR. And you guys can definitely practice this by applying it to your ATI. There will be a couple of test questions on what's included in an SBAR. And I may have you select which type of data is assessment data, which type of data is background data. So you do need to know this for your test. But they'll be fairly easy. Okay. We talked about feedback earlier. Make sure you don't have any emotion when you do it. Just make sure it's objective. Make sure you say something good about them before and after the criticism. See, positive feedback identifies strong behaviors. Be encouraged. Okay, so anything that the people you're leading, when you're a leader, are doing that you want them to continue, please let them know that. Like I said in my email today, Text is my preferred method of communication. I'm glad you guys are texting me. That's how I like to communicate. Just don't do it after 9 p.m. Okay. It's kind of a good example of that. Let's see. Anything that you want to be repeated, make sure you point it out, especially in front of others. It's really good, helpful for positive feedback. Mission, vision, and values. We kind of discussed this earlier. Mission is a formal statement of the aims and values of a company, organization, or individual. And here's Baptist's for you. Okay, and then values are a set of beliefs in which that mission can be accomplished. Okay, those definitions will be on your test. You don't have to know Baptist's per se, but the definition of mission and values will be on your test. Okay, motivation. So how do you get your team to do what you need them to do? How do you get your team to be a good team? Assuming that you're not doing bullying and any of those other toxic behaviors. Okay, this is how your book teaches you to do it. And it's not a bad way, okay? But it all starts with how you motivate people to do the right thing, okay? So at the very base, you have things like salary, okay? Patient ratios, the policies. Hopefully that will support them to do the right thing. Next, people need safety, okay, to have motivation to do their job well. Affirmation, this is where we're getting into the positive feedback loop, okay? Building relationships with your team, telling them that they're doing a good job, telling them in front of other people, doing things like Daisy Awards. Okay? It's all affirmation and recognition, which brings me to the next tier, recognition, growth, responsibility, and the nature of the job. So I don't know if you guys know that Baptist Health has tiers for nurses, okay, RN 1, 2, 3, etc. They didn't used to have that. They put that in place as a motivator to motivate nurses to get to those RN1 or from the RN1 to the 2, 3, 4 because they thought it would help motivate people to do their jobs better, and it does, okay? But putting things in like opportunities for growth and recognition is a great way to get people to do what you need them to do on your team. And then achievement and advancement. And speaking of recognition and growth, Christy and Megan won our last 2 games. And so I still have to get Megan her award for winning, but I already gave Christy her. So good job. See, that's my way of doing this for you guys. Okay. This just gives you examples of those from your book if you don't have a copy of the book. All right. Leadership styles will be on your test. So real quick, you have 4 different types of leadership styles. I'm only going to have like 2 questions over this. It's not on boards. And you guys know I like to focus on board stuff. But I think it is important for you to know because I've had all these type of managers, and when you can recognize their leadership style, it helps you recognize how to communicate with them. Okay, so autocratic is somebody who's has to be in charge all the time. They micromanage. Okay, emphasis on policy. No, the policy says you can't do that. The policy says you can do that. Okay, I'm sure everybody's had a manager like this. And this leadership style can be good in crisis situations. So that's why these people are really good. These type A's are really good in like the ICU, okay? Emergent situations like a code. And autocratic leadership is great for a code. Hey, Amaria, go get the Ambu bag. Hey, Jamiria, start an IB, okay? That's a great way to lead during a code. But it is a great way to lead as, a team member. Great way to lead while you're trying to pass meds. Is it very polite? No, it's really not. Okay. Laissez-faire. So this leader is super focused on people. They want to be everybody's friend, okay? But they're not super worried about getting goals accomplished, okay? So these people are good whenever you have like a task force or a group like designated to address maybe socioeconomic problems or problems that aren't super emergent, okay? Good social problems to worry about. Laissez-faire. I had a manager like this when I was in CDICU. He's no longer there, but he was very hands-off, very wanted to make everybody happy, didn't want to make any rules, didn't want to enforce any policies, didn't care if people were late. And it caused a lot of conflict within the nursing staff. Because we did care about that kind of stuff, right? Democratic is a mixture. Democratic takes votes into account. It takes longer to get things done in a democratic way, but it typically makes people a little bit more satisfied. But you'll vote for things, or when I gave you guys the survey about when you wanted to attend Extra Skills Lab. I felt bad that you had to come back for a second one, and so I wanted to give you an option of when to attend. And so I did that, and that was a very democratic style of leadership. Okay. Situational. That means you change based on the situation. And this is all obviously the optimal way to be, because you want to be democratic in things that can allow for that. You want to be laissez-faire in things that aren't, that are more people focused. You want to be autocratic in emergent situations. And so situational is the best leadership style. This is how to get your nursing assistants to communicate better with you. Okay. Respect their opinions. Encourage them to tell you what's going on. They really know the most about your patient as far as their current physical condition. So talk to them, actively listening. Show concern about their concerns. So if they have a problem, make sure you address it and don't just bury it under the rug. Okay. Make sure that you rephrase their concerns when they come to you with concerns so that you understand what they need from you. These are some communication styles. So the best way to communicate is an assertive communication style. Basically, this is telling somebody what you need. Okay, I'm very assertive, and sometimes people take it wrong. Okay, but being assertive is just being direct. Okay, your statement should begin with I when you're an assertive communicator. Okay, so say somebody wants you to stay late at work, and you really don't want to stay late. Okay. An assertive communication would be something like, all of our patients are covered by incoming nurses. Yes, the staff may be short on day shift, but I am not able to stay any longer. I apologize. Okay. It's like setting limits. Okay. You have to set limits on what's healthy for you. And this is assertive communicators are very good at doing that. Okay. You have too much to do. The person in charge is giving you too much to do. Say, I know you would like all of this done today. There's no way I can get it all done. What are your priorities for me to do? Okay. So these are people who set limits, and they're healthy communicators, and they tell people what can be done, what can't, and they set their expectations. They're very direct. Okay. Passive communication is saying, okay, I'll stay late, and then complaining about it to other people. Okay. Passive communicators, they let people walk all over them. Okay. Aggressive communicators are people who are kind of hateful. Okay. And you can be like this. I can be like this when I'm stressed, for sure. I can. Okay. If you tell a resident, don't put your call light again, or I'm going to take it away from you. Okay. That's very aggressive. Don't do that. It's an aggressive communication style. Okay. Any ultimatums or threats, anything like that is very aggressive behavior. Okay. And then passive aggressive is kind of like bullying, talking about people behind their backs, pretending everything's fine to their face, but then it not being fine in the background. It's the least professional type of communication. And then we have bullying. We're going to go over that this afternoon. So I'm going to give you all a break. And then at 12:30, we'll be back and we'll do our bullying lecture. Any questions? Everybody bored to tears?